Hey folks, Shaw here with Royal Tiger Imports, and today I'm here to show you all something very special. We finally got in the Ethiopian AK parts kits. These parts kits are really interesting so far. We've already unboxed the crate at this point, and we just got a quick look at what we're working with here. We've got a couple different models, so I'll show you that up close shortly here. But before that, let's take a quick look at how they sent them over to us. In the crate here, you can see they have packaged all of these kits into these plastic sealed packets. Notice the original nice live barrels. So those are nice to have. They don't have to chop up the barrels anymore due to import law. And you can see a little bit of everything. It is, of course, a little hard to see through the plastic, which is why we've got some already unboxed for y'all to take a closer look at. But at an immediate glance, we've got a few different types. We've got this one, which sticks out as a little bit of an earlier model. Notice the lack of the larger AK-74 muzzle brake. But then you've got your rear of the receiver, trigger guard, some of the components there. Unfortunately, almost every single one of these does not have the bolt or bolt carrier. That's just the way that they were sold in Ethiopia. However, let's take a closer look at one up close so you can see exactly what I'm talking about here. In front of me here, I have two of these Ethiopian Gafat 1 AKs. So you can see it's a little hard to tell on that one, but it has a very faint GAFAT-1 stamp on the side of the receiver here. This is as close to a Type 68 as it can be, generally speaking. You'll notice that it has a distinct front gas block and sling swivel setup here that is extremely reminiscent of the Type 68 North Korean style AKs. You've got your handguard retainer there, and then it's just has a little bit of grease and debris. It definitely needs to get cleaned out. These things are definitely due for a nice cleaning. But in addition, the more that you look at these, the more you realize that these are heavily inspired and based upon the North Korean Type 68s. And it makes sense because the North Koreans helped them set up their facility. For example, on the Type 68s, the right lower section of the front trunnion is about double the thickness of the left lower section. And they rivet them differently because this, on this side, has a rivet that is crushed, and the rivet head on the other side, the tail of it rather, is crushed and left. On this side, it's countersunk and ground flush, something unique to the Korean and now Ethiopian style AKs. In addition, if you take a look at the rear sight, you can see that the Battle Zero setting is marked H. I have also seen some limited amounts of information saying that they had a Roman numeral for 3, but not 100% sure about that. I've only seen the H so far on these. If we take a look at the front end, you can see that's a pretty standard style, well, as standard as these get, of more of an AKM style of front sight, except it has this hollow cut on the back, which is distinctly based off of the Type 68 pattern. And let's get a closer look at the rear section of the receiver here. You can see this sling swivel, which is distinctive of the, again, Type 68 style. And what's really interesting is the rear trunnion situations. The rear trunnion on that is definitely a different shape, much more reminiscent of like an AK-74 style where it's hollowed out in the center there. And then we've got some of our other components down here. Notice the ribbed trigger guard, the riveted on section for the pistol grip. So instead of having a separate nut that goes into the receiver like a standard AKM, this is permanently riveted to the receiver, and then you screw your grip directly onto it. You can also see the parts here, pretty standard. You've got your rate reducer, trigger, hammer, this, that. Some of the components are numbered. I imagine that would have been a numbers matching to the receiver at one point. And then we can also take a look at the second one here. Again, this is just another one of the Gafat 1s. Overall, very interesting. And these, it's worth noting, these have not been imported in quantity into the US as far as I can tell. This is the very first time that this has ever been done. So this is a really cool opportunity. It is unfortunate that they are missing the bolts and bolt carrier, and a lot of them are missing the dust cover and recoil spring. That being said, you're getting a fair amount of the components, and otherwise they're just really unavailable. So it is a really neat opportunity to get a hold of one of these. If you're a niche AK collector like I am, and I'm definitely going to build up one of these are super neat. Let's get a closer look at these. So if you're, again, a niche AK collector, you'll start looking at this and realize that something's a little weird about it. So this is still 7.62x39, but it has an AK-74 style of front muzzle brake setup there. So what's interesting is that this is the ET97 model, and this has been updated to, effectively speaking, a clone more or less of a 103 towards the front end, an AK-103. However, it's still mostly Type 68 based internals. And also what's interesting is that if you look at this, that is still, as far as I can tell, a Type 68 style gas block with your bayonet lug. But what's interesting is that due to the addition of the front brake here, your bayonet lug placement changes. So this has an additional bayonet lug, like an AK-74 or a 100 series, placed up here, meaning that you have two bayonet lugs. So it's kind of an interesting little thing there. They just never shaved off or never dealt with this, what would have been turned into more of an accessory lug to line up the cleaning rod. And it still has the placement for the cleaning rod at the back there. It's a little bit interesting. In addition to that, we also have another one here. Let's get a closer look at these receiver markings so you can see what I'm talking about. You see that it's marked ET-97. This is a little more common so far of this batch that I have seen, but that being said, we still have to go through this whole batch and know exactly what we're working with. You'll notice that that is the Battle Zero marking of H, and that they are graduated out to 1000. And they also appear to be chrome line bores. Every single one of these that I have seen so far, you can see the chrome lining peeking out there, appears to be all chrome lined, interesting enough, including on the inside of the flash hider. So I've glanced at a fair amount of the bores on these. I've been pretty impressed with the bore condition. I mean, some of them obviously have wear, but they aren't extremely corroded so far. You know, fingers crossed that we have a bunch of these with good bores, but we lucked out with the barrels being able to import it. So having an additional nice bore quality on top of everything else, it's a nice feature. One last thing let's take a look at is the furniture. These furniture sets are extremely uncommon in this set. There's only a handful that we've seen so far, so most of these kits are only going to be the metal components that you see. However, I did want to take an opportunity to show you this really interesting stock. This is specific to the Gafat AK, and it's the Gafat Armament Engineering Complex. You'll see that it has that stamp there with the star. And it also has these little raised bumps, extremely similar in pattern at least, to the East German KM72 stocks, the what's often called a pebble stock. That is interesting by itself, and they do, for what it's worth, have a trapdoor. That is more of a 103 or 74 style butt plate, so it's interesting. Again, with these Ethiopian AKs, they have a little bit of everything. They've got, they were originally based upon the Type 68s, but then you see a little bit more of a 103, some East German influence, either directly or indirectly with the stock, and then, they're mixing and matching, for lack of a better term, when they were deciding what they wanted to do with these, as far as I can tell. One other interesting thing, let's see if we can pull one up here. I don't think I have it in front of me, unfortunately, but I did see there is a little bit of a variance in the rear trunnions. Some of the rear trunnions appear to be a very heavy gauge stamping up top, as well as the lower rear tang. So we'll try and get another follow-up video as we go through these kits to show you exactly what we're working with. This is just an initial video to show you this cool stuff that we got, because we're just so excited to offer this finally to the market. One last thing I do want to show before we conclude the video is the handguard up close. It's a pretty standard appearance of the handguard, very similar to like a Bulgarian AK-74 at the end of the day. And you can also see, although it is blued and it's covered in grease, so it's a little hard to see, but there is a heat shield in that as well. And for what it's worth, that handguard is made pretty nice. It's, you know, if you offered this to me at a gun show and said that it was a XYZ, you know, generic AK-74 style handguard, you know, I'd say, hey, maybe it has a little bit of wear on it, but it looks like any other Comblock pattern. So it is a pretty well-made component from what it seems. So that's about it for now. We're going to do another follow-up video on these in the future to show you even more up-close details and anything else that we find out about it. I for sure have to do a ton more research on these, but nonetheless just wanted to get something out there because I know there's been a little hubbub on the internet, people saying, hey, Royal Tiger Imports is importing, you know, these kits that have never been done before. So wanted to show you something as soon as we got it in. Thank you very much for watching. God bless.